O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. That's it. Oh. Perfect. Okay, so we're talking about this enlightenment. And of course, Lord's been giving us a step-by-step. So he's speaking of this as the result of, and the fruit of. This is where we were yesterday. When you know who you are enlightened. In that self-realization, the darkness of ignorance disappears in the light of true knowledge that shines like the sun, revealing the Supreme. And then, continuing, those who continuously think about that self, God, merge with it and settle into it. Whoever holds this as their goal will no longer be subject to rebirth, because self-realization dispels any remaining flaws. We can discuss a little, we'll do in context, and we'll get to 18. But we were talking a little bit about prayer and some idea that prayer wasn't in the practice, but this is prayer. This is prayer unceasing. Thinking of God every moment. What's prayer? Walking with God. So, is it asking for something from God? No, it's thinking of God. Yeah. Oh, there's a beautiful quote. So our dear Gopal Chaitanya had turned us on to Ananda ashram, which is Swami Ramdas. And we had the daily thoughts. This was 2 days ago. Thought for the day. In Sanskrit, the word for remembrance is smaran. Smaran is the easiest way of approach to God. The moment you take his name, you become aware of him. The tongue and the mind must always be repeating his name and be thinking of him. It is said that the remembrance of God must be so continuous and unbroken that it should be like a stream of oil poured from one vessel to another. So that practice is what's called in the Western or Christian tradition, prayer unceasing. Communion. When the thought is of nothing other than the capital S self, than the Supreme. That's the prescription. Those who continuously think about that, merge with it and settle into it. Number 18. Those who have realized the self see that same self equally in a humble scholar, a cow, a dog, or a dog eater. And some commentary from Swami. He says, such person has that equal vision. Having equal vision means you don't see anybody as low or high. To you, both thief and police officer are equal. You don't see the superficial. The self of the thief is the same as that of the police officer. Something is playing the part of the thief, and that same something is playing the part of the police officer. Because the sage is rooted in the self, he or she sees them both as self. So for the sage, they're equal. This explains the biblical commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love only your good neighbor as yourself. Or love your neighbor who has the same label. If he's Catholic and you're Catholic, love him. If she's Protestant, throw stones at her. No, it simply says your neighbor. And who is your neighbor? Who is your neighbor right now? Just whoever's next to you, isn't it? Yeah, Hari. My neighbor is Hari. And Hari's neighbor is? Phil. So he says the one sitting next to you now, or in the next room, the next house, or the next town, everyone close to you is your neighbor. But then the great question, how to love your neighbor as your own self.
You gotta love yourself first.
You have to see yourself in them. Just that. Just that. Otherwise, you can't. And by the way, we naturally love ourselves. We naturally love ourselves. So there's a lot of discourse and discussion about this, but we naturally love ourselves. We do. I mean, the self-deprecation and all that is one thing, but even that is coming out of a natural love for ourselves. But that natural love of self is boundless. When we start drawing lines, then we'll suffer because we're attempting then to limit what's natural. So here, Lord Krishna is speaking with us about how to erase the lines, right? How to eliminate the lines, how to see ourselves everywhere, how to see God everywhere. You have to see yourself in them. That's compassion, right? So in the Buddhist tradition, there's all the practices of compassion. It's the same, isn't it? Yeah. You have to see yourself in them. It's the way to find compassion. And we can do it at an individual level, you know. We can. We've all practiced it, right?
I have a hard time seeing myself in other people. I can
but just consider it this way. If you've had a problem, have you ever done this, where you have a problem with someone and you realize that their behavior that you're having a problem with is coming because of their suffering? Have you ever done that?
Yes.
And as soon as you see that, as soon as you recognize that it's their suffering, do you not find some commonality?
Yes.
And then compassion comes.
Yeah.
And then you feel a different feeling towards them, right?
Yeah.
So that is a practice of finding yourself in the other. It is a practice of that. But here, with this, and it is Vedanta, it's yoga, but it's also Vedanta. Lord Krishna is sharing that the same self is in all. So if we do the work and see it, and what does that mean? If we unveil it, if we unveil the wisdom, what we find is that wisdom only sees one. Right? So in sadhana, we do the work of unveiling. Yes? We're unwrapping. And we're unwrapping the same wisdom. But that wisdom sees only the one.
Yes.
Wherever. So, but if we're practicing, then you can practice Vedanta, which is to remind yourself and to do the work and to see the five elements, to see Aditi. We've been in Upanishads working with this, right? So Aditi, the world soul, the firstborn of Brahman, the firstborn of the Absolute. We see when we're discussing it, we see that's what's here, right? So if you do the work and see it, can you? What do you mean do the work? If you practice remembrance, and if you consciously bring these realizations back into this moment, we're doing the work. That's sadhana. So if we do it, then we'll see that commonality. And if you see yourself, then love will be there. In the same way that it is with an individual that you've had a difficulty with. If you really see yourself, if you see some imaginary self that you imagine to be common, it'll be very difficult. But if you can really see the same essence, right? Which naturally the self itself does. So he continues. Otherwise you can't love them as your own self. How can you see yourself in another if you don't know yourself? And he says, suppose I say, here's a banana. Please see the banana that you had yesterday in this banana. To do that, you should have had a banana yesterday in order to know what a banana is. Only then will you recognize one and the other is the same. If I don't know what a banana is, I can't say this one is the same as the other, and that I love this and I loved the other banana. The clue here is to know yourself and then see yourself in your neighbors. Then love them as yourself. That's why someone who has realized the self will always have equal vision based on that self or that spirit. A God-realized person will see nothing but God everywhere, even though that God may be clothed in different forms and using different names. That's why Sri Krishna says that whether it's a dog or an outcast or a great spiritual person, it's all the same to the person of wisdom. He continues, how can we truly come together? Only with this spiritual knowledge, not by mental, physical, or financial knowledge. So the way we try to come together in the world doesn't do it. Okay? You can't do it. To come together, truly, we have to see the self, see our own self. So spiritual knowledge alone. We can never find the oneness in any of these areas, nor in the name of country, race, creed, community, money, or education. The only way to see everybody equally is in that divine vision. Then we see the same truth colored in different ways. When children go to a candy store, there's so many chocolates packaged in so many ways, different designs and different labels, but ultimately they're all chocolates. If you ask for a pound of assorted chocolates, the shop owner will just take a little from here, there, and everywhere and weigh out 1 pound. You're being charged for a pound of chocolate. The shopkeeper doesn't worry about the color or shape, the name or label of the candies. You could say the shopkeeper's vision is in the chocolate, but the children will say, I love the square chocolate, or the oval one is very good, the green one is beautiful. Each will buy something different. Mine is so good. No, mine is the best. They even fight amongst themselves. Nevertheless, they're all licking the same chocolate. So the shopkeeper has the chocolate vision, and the children have the vision of the form and name and the different labels. Someone who goes to the very root of it all doesn't worry about any of these differences. Whatever label you have, it doesn't matter. It's all the same to the sage. That's what we call a person of equal vision. I'm stressing the point here because we often talk about unity, oneness, and harmony. But true harmony can be experienced only by realizing the spirit and seeing that spirit in everybody. In all other areas, we see only differences. And such harmony won't last long. When people dress the same way or speak the same language, they're in a sort of harmony. But if somebody speaks a different language, they see him or her as different. It's not a universal harmony then. There's only one universal truth. That's the great advantage of realizing one's own true self. And see if we can each recognize this in our own mental instrument, right? See if we see that when someone or something is different color, different shape, different form, isn't it? Different name, right? Different thoughts, different actions.
Yes.
You see that our own intellect labels them as different, separate. That's an error. That's an error. You see? It's a mistake. They're not different. They're wearing different clothes. They're doing different jobs. They're speaking different languages. They have different experiences. But if you take the clothes off, there's nothing different here. Anywhere you look, there's nothing different here. There's the one shining everywhere. Huh? You see how if you can see that, and to see it, you have to overcome something. Is it true? What do you have to overcome?
Prejudice. Past thoughts.
Wrong seeing.
Yes.
Just stop. And you look and see where it is. I was talking with someone yesterday, one of our close sangha, and she made this comment. It's an interesting comment, an interesting experience for sadhaka. Not unusual. She said, I know who I am, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like we're one. And that would be a very common experience. In fact, that's what we're dealing with. You want to take a second and process what's being said and see if we have something to say about that? I know who I am. I know that I'm not separate. I know that I'm not this body. I know that I'm not these thoughts. I see these thoughts. I know who I am. But it doesn't feel like there's unity. You want to deal with that? And not uncommon. In fact, the whole experience we have here is like this. There's a knowledge which exists, which simply has to be unveiled. Kyle, you have something to share about it?
No, I just see it all as it's the Maya. You get lost in the Maya is what the separation seems like is the Maya. And the real is the self.
Yeah.
That's the connection. And we all get lost and the mind pulls us back into the Maya all the time.
Right. And we're looking for that feeling, even though the knowledge is here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's subject-object. The knowledge resides in the self. But to the self, everything outside of it is an object. And it's changing. All of the objects, they're constantly changing, right? Constantly changing. What is a feeling but an object? It's passing, it's ephemeral. One day it's this, one moment it's this, another moment it's that. When you're looking to divine the truth by your feelings, it's off the mark. It's off the mark. Because those feelings are experiential. They're experiences. And the feelings are existing in the field.
Totally unstable.
And they're unstable.
Yes.
So they're sense objects. The feelings are sense objects. And the very fact that you see that the feelings are different. One time it felt like this, now it feels like that. Right? Yeah. Trying to look at that as the diviner of truth is impossible. It can't work. So Lord Krishna is giving us the formula here. Know yourself. Know yourself. Know yourself. Don't feel yourself, because when you feel yourself, you're feeling something that's outside of you. You're feeling something passing. Huh? And if you look for stability in terms of feelings, you can't find it. Right? But if you look for stability in terms of knowledge, you can. You simply have to unveil it.
So we're having to be able to see subtler and subtler within our inner world, because some of these feelings get very subtle as far as or even I'll find myself getting involved with thoughts that come so quickly, such as yogic things. It'll be with someone that their mind is all over the place, and then my mind starts to say, "Oh, their mind's all over the place. They're gossip and this and that," and it's almost like it's a curse. That you have to drop all that stuff that you've learned.
You have to drop it. You have to think. What do? You think of God. That's why the thought of God has to be. But also karma yoga. You have to act. You have to act. When you stop acting and try to just sit, what comes? Experiences. There is the place, that I. But let's continue with what Lord Krishna is sharing here. But recognize that these thoughts you're experiencing, right? They're arising. Oh. The feelings arising, rising and falling. But that self, capital S self, is self-existent, and it's everywhere. You peel away the veils in yourself, what's been veiling your capital S self, and that allows you also to peel away the veils in everything that you're seeing, and to see what's really there. It's a practice, yes, but also it's already existent. It's that second level of consciousness and the third level of consciousness. It's already existent. It's already here, right now. Again, what we're doing is engaging in life in a way as to come into alignment with what's already here. When you see the stainless unity of God, Brahman, everywhere, you become established in Brahman and rise above the constant changes of this world. So that's 19. You see how that's related. The constant changes of this world are the constant changes in my world. They're not the constant changes in some outer world. They're the constant changes in my world, my feelings. By the way, separation is only a feeling.
Yes.
It's false. We prove it day after day after day. We prove it to ourselves. We prove that there's no separation day after day after day. And then because we feel other, we fall and accept there's an other. But there's no other. Right? So there's really the need to see God everywhere. There is the need to see God everywhere.
There is no inner and outer either.
There's not even an inner and outer. But we could say there is a seeing and not. We could say that there's Brahmavidya and Avidya. Like that. Seeing God everywhere and not seeing. Knowing the truth and not knowing. So we can say like that.
So are we saying You just have to know, but the feeling doesn't go away.
No, we don't say that. Once you become disaffiliated with the feeling, then you're disaffiliated with the feeling. It's no disturbance. No, not necessarily even any awareness of it. Like cloud. The clouds don't bother you. The clouds are there.
No.
They're not me. I mean, if I say as a Vedantin, well, all of them are, then that would be correct also. But those clouds right there, not me.
You have to start.
Right? The ocean is me, for God's sakes. And the clouds are the ocean, aren't they?
So it's still gonna be there when I'm just disidentified with it?
Correct.
Okay.
But it's not there to begin with, is the thing. Only the ocean is here. You're seeing clouds, but there are no clouds. There's only the ocean. You see that? There you go. There are no clouds. There's only the ocean. Okay.
So it's the
It's the same.
about what something is.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, but there's like a label or a concept that's put onto it, and it gets
That's
very
being
confusing.
happened in the mental faculty. So, yeah, but it's false again. Because there's no cloud. There's just the ocean. So the ocean appears as a cloud. It appears as steam. It appears as a drop. But there's no drop. There's no steam. There's no cloud. There's only ocean. There's no you and me separate. The one appears as many. And then in delusion, this feeling, this is where we say negate that feeling too, because this separation only exists as a feeling.
Feelings change.
It's not true.
Right.
So, in knowing yourself, then thoughts, there's just the ocean. So there's a little more about that here from Swami Venkatesananda on the topic. Here. These last two sutras, or slokas, he says, the doctrine of essential equality or sameness is difficult for the ignorance-conditioned intellect to grasp. Understanding here, he's not saying that the intellect is ignorant. He's saying it's been conditioned with ignorance. If you take water and you put it in the company of coffee grounds, earth. If you put the water in the company of the coffee grounds, earth, the resulting substance you call coffee, but it's nothing other than water and the earth is in suspension in the water. The water hasn't become coffee, it hasn't become anything other than what it is, but the water is conditioned. It's conditioned. It's in the company of coffee. But if you let it sit for long enough, then the water will separate itself. It will evaporate, right? It will continue to be the ocean that it's always been. And what's left will be in the cup, in the bottom, and that's the earth, that's the coffee. They've only ever been together in a conditioned relationship. In the same way, the intellect doesn't become ignorant. The intellect is in the company of avidya. So it's conditioned by ignorance, but it doesn't become ignorance. It's what it is. Intellect also is essentially pure. But when you remove the conditioning, that's what we're doing, isn't it? When you remove the conditioning, that's removing the veils. The intellect becomes pure, becomes more and more pure. Is it correct? It doesn't hold on to the old notions as much, right? Okay. So he says this doctrine of essential equality or sameness is difficult for the ignorance-conditioned intellect to grasp. It is not the dull and drab sameness of uniformity in which all skins will be treated to have the same color, all noses and faces will be standardized by plastic surgery, all men and all beings will eat the same food, wear the same clothes, and will be treated in identical manner. The sage views all in the same light. He does not forget that they have different duties, places, and needs as cells in different parts of the one body of God. He recognizes that the dog and the cow are one in God, and this recognition takes the form in him of attitudes and actions as befit the different roles allotted to them. The application of this doctrine is not as simple as it sounds, for it is the seeing of sameness that is vital, and any action that substitutes this seeing will lead us astray. This sameness is the nature of God. God is faultless and spotless. We see that also in his nature, the 5 elements are all pure and purifying. So the elements also remain pure. They can be exposed and intermingled, as it were, but they can't actually be made impure. They remain as earth element, water element, fire element, etc.
Wonderful, so we can never die.
Oh, nothing ever dies. Nothing ever dies. Nothing ever dies. It's the truth. Nothing ever dies. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. Death is a
We
joke.
were talking about that up on the hill, and that's what I said with even science proves that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only be transformed.
Yeah.
That's it.
And even that, only in appearance. It can't be anything other than what it is. Not for a moment. All energy is aditi. All energy is world soul. The self is identical with God and thus free from sin. Sin is ignorance. In the dark, you see some animals moving in the backyard. You throw a stone and go to sleep, satisfied that they have gone. But they were just shadows. But the stone throwing created an impression in your mind. In our lives, such actions give rise to tendencies that lead to sin and rebirth. The enlightened soul does not get involved in delusion, sin, and therefore birth and death. Never born, never die. It's the truth. This COVID, it can't kill you. It can't even really make you sick.
It's true too.
The enlightened soul does not get involved in delusion, sin, and therefore birth and death. Absorbed in sameness, it realizes its eternal oneness with Brahman, the infinite. Okay, we should close. Questions or comments? Tiger Dave. Okay. Continue to be continued tomorrow morning. Okay, let's close with final prayers and arati then, page 174. Om Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavatu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makashit Dukhabhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humbly Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. And for all of the saints and sages of all traditions. Jai. Let's raise for art.